Äh, Guten Tag, Herr Zimmer. Zaina, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. We're very happy to have you here. And we were reading your book, Me and Alessio. He's not available in video, but he's following our interview. And it's a very nice book. It's a very amazing book, actually. Because normally when people talk about communism and socialism and capitalism, they're always but this comparison between the United States and Russia is not it's not good because they are different countries and they have different stories. But when I read your book, I was reading these comparisons between the North Korea and South Korea, Western Germany and Eastern Germany, the Chile and the other South American countries. So these are very nice examples, very interesting because when you were evaluating these countries, both Koreas, both Germanys, and the example of Chile, they were nice because these are countries very with homogeneous populations and the same religious history, the same historic premises. So these are more or less identical countries with different results. So when I was reading your book, I was very amused by it because these are examples, tremendous examples. So the first thing I'd like to ask you, because I took the liberty to read about you like yesterday, is how did you manage to abandon Marxism and become a capitalism, let us say, warrior with this nice T-shirt?
Yes, when I was young, I was very leftist, like a lot of young people. I believed in Mao Zedong, and I founded a group at my school, a very leftist group, and I had a newspaper, even with only 13 years. It was like Red Flag, this newspaper, and it took a couple of years, maybe it's 10 years. It doesn't happen that one day you're a socialist and the next morning you wake up and then you join a free market economy idea. So it was a long step, but I think it's not so unusual. You find a lot of people who are very leftist when they are young. But what I want to add, what you said in your introduction, this is exactly what is important about my book, that I don't compare any ideal utopia with a reality like leftist people do. You know what they do usually? They have their any theory about perfect society written in a book, and then they compare it with reality. And sure, it's always bad for reality. And it would be the same. Maybe you are married, and then one day, imagine your wife comes home and says, we have to be divorced. And you ask why? I don't understand. We had a good relationship. And then she said, oh, she started reading this love novels, romantic love book, how perfect about perfect love romance. And then she compared this what's written in the book with your marriage. And she said, so we have to divorce because now I saw how bad our relationship is. And I think you would call it very unfair. You would tell her, please compare our real marriage with other real marriage and not with any book. And this is
Of
exactly
course,
what I did,
yes.
to compare things that you can compare, like China in the time of Mao Zedong, where, for example, at the end of the 50s, 45 million people died as a result of the biggest socialist experiment in history. And then China today, or as you mentioned it, Venezuela and Chile, West Germany, East Germany, North Korea, South Korea, or then maybe I don't know. I know the objection. What a lot of socialists will say, oh, this is not what we want. We want something like democratic socialism. And so I
Not
have
real
also
socialism.
some, yes, and so I have also some examples of democratic socialism in my book, like in Sweden and in UK in the 70s or the 80s, and they were also a total disaster, what a lot of people don't know. Some people think Sweden today is a socialist country, but this is absolutely wrong. Sweden is as socialist or capitalist as the United States today. They had their negative experience with this socialist experiment. And but this is what you mentioned was indeed the very important point. Compare things that you can compare. And if you do this, you will find out that in the
Yes.
last 100 years, all socialist experiments failed, all without any exception. There's not one exception. And but it's always the same story. If one experiment failed, then socialists will tell you, oh no, sorry, this wasn't real socialism, but next time it will be better. And this is the same story that happens now since 100 years.
Yes, it's very interesting this Swedish example because when I started reading the book, I'm from Brazil, and this is a very common misunderstanding in Brazil, and they always think, but the socialism is good, but you have to consider these nice examples of the Nordic countries, of Sweden, of Finland, of Denmark, and they work well, and these societies are very rich, and they are always in the highest in all rankings of education and sanity, and they're not socialist countries, as you said. They're capitalist countries. If you look into the Heritage Foundation ranking and other rankings of free market and economic freedom, you see that actually is Sweden is one of the freest countries in the world. Amazingly, yes. And this book is a very myth buster because yes, it's the story of Sweden as a socialist paradise, which was used even in the last American election. They said, Bernie Sanders, because we want to make Sweden in the United States. And one of the journalists said, okay, so we must get freer. We must liberalize and privatize more companies because Sweden is freer than us nowadays.
Yes, for example, they take only some examples. For example, it's true Sweden and the other Scandinavian countries have higher income tax. This is true on the one hand. But on the other hand, for example, if they tell you we want to be like Sweden, I tell, okay, first thing, then abolish every wealth tax because they have no wealth tax in Sweden. Second thing, abolish every inheritance tax because they have no inheritance tax in Sweden. So they are not well informed about it. And you mentioned this ranking of economic freedom by Heritage Foundation. Maybe not everyone in the audience knows it, so maybe I will add a few words about this. I have one chapter about it. This is every year you can find it in the internet by the Heritage Foundation. It's a ranking of economic freedom. You can call it as well a capitalism score, how capitalist is a country. So I can see one. Now I can see again. Okay, this is this ranking. There's a scoring for every country in the world. So the freest countries are like maybe Hong Kong in economic sense. You don't know how it's changing now with what happens in China, or for example,
Yes.
Singapore, like Australia, New Zealand, and I think Denmark, if I have it correctly in my mind, it's number 7. So it's one of the freest countries in the world. Absolutely no example for
Yes.
socialism. And in the end of this ranking, you find Cuba, North Korea, and Venezuela at the end of this ranking. And why is it so important? Because I have a lot of examples in my book. And maybe some critical readers, they will say, okay, the author took examples on this way that they fit to his thesis. But this is not true. And for this reason, it's very interesting to study this ranking. It's free. You can find it in the internet, and you find a lot of information about all countries in the world. And I tell you one thing why I wrote this book, because I have lectures all over the world about this topic. I was in South Korea, I'm United States, UK, and hopefully I wanted to go to Italy, but this was not possible because coronavirus. But if it is over, I will go to Italy. Then I speak
Yes.
very often young, to young people. And what I see, two things. First thing, they don't learn a lot of very important facts at school that you can find in my book. For example, I asked the very often younger audience. I asked them, have you ever heard about the so-called Great Leap Forward by Mao Zedong at the end of the 50s? I mentioned it before. 45 million people died. This was the biggest socialist experiment in history. Most of the people said, no, never heard about it. But why not? Teachers should tell them something about it at school. But if not, you can find it in my book. So, and then I tell them something, another fact that is very important. In the 1981, 88% of Chinese people lived in extreme poverty. 88%. Today, it's only less than 1%. And what happened in the meantime? That between 800 and 900 million Chinese people became out of poverty. It started with Deng Xiaoping's reforms in the beginning of the 80s to have more private property, more market economy. And this was the reason why the situation improved. And then some people ask me, yes, but why do you take China as an example? Is China a purely capitalist country? No, of course it's not. It's a mixed economy, like as most economies in the world. You have nowhere in the world pure capitalism and pure socialism. But I have something, and this is very important to understand. Maybe the most important thing for this evening. I call it the test tube theory. Imagine you have a test tube, and you have there two things in this test tube: market and state. And then imagine you add more market, as they did in China, for example, in the last 40 years. And what happened? Situation improved. Or you add more state, like they did in Venezuela in the last 20 years, and it was a total disaster. You have the highest inflation rate in the world today, and I think 10% flat from Venezuela. People have hunger there. And this is only one reason. It's the absolute relationship between state and market is not so important. Important is how it changes. If you want to explain a development, you have to understand whether things are changing. And especially about China, there are a lot of misunderstandings. Sure, China is no democratic system. It's a dictatorship. I don't speak about these political things now. I speak about only economy at this moment. And if you speak about economy, then there's a big misunderstanding. People say, yes, the state has so much influence in China. No, but this is not the reason for the great economic development. I spoke with one of the leading Chinese economists. His name is Chang Wai. And by the way, he wrote a very good book, The Logic of the Market. And he told me all our progress, all our development was not because of the state, but in spite of the state. Not because of the state, but in spite of the state. That there is so much state today in China. The reason is only 40 years ago it was 100% state, and then it was reduced and reduced. But it's sure there's
Yes, yes.
lots of state. But what a lot of people don't know is um, that I think more than 60% of new jobs created are in the private industry in China today, and not in the state industry. And if you see all these companies like Tencent or Alibaba, these are entrepreneurs as capitalists as we are. If I were in China and spoke with these people about Karl Marx, sure, they have their Karl Marx and all this, but they laugh about it. No one believes in Karl Marx there. I think you can find more people in Italy or Germany who believe in Karl Marx than you find in China who believe in Karl Marx. So it's one example. The other example, what a lot of people don't know,
Yeah.
is Korea. And I've been in Korea, and when I was there, I was so fascinated. I saw there shopping malls as I've never seen in Europe. But what is important now? In the 60s, Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world, as poor as the poorest African countries today. A lot of people don't know it. Our people had hunger and starvation, and it was very, very, very poor in the 60s. And then, in North Korea, they have this experiment with socialism and economy, and situation is still very bad for the people. And South Korea, they decided for another way. for capitalism. And I have a lot of products at home from Korea. Like my TV is from Korea. A lot of people have their mobile phone from Korea, and the situation improved so much. And this is the way I want to discuss about capitalism, not about any theory, because you can discuss all night about theory. I want to see what happened in reality, and these are only a few examples.
Yes, yes. I would like to go back a little because you said something I think it's very, very nice. It's about China. You said, it's not important if China is capitalism or not. The important thing is that China in the last 40 years have done some very important reforms in the capitalism sense, while Venezuela has done very pernicious reforms in the socialism sense. It's nice because every time you talk with a communist or a socialist, he says, but this wasn't real socialist, real socialism." And this example of China is nice because yes, and China is not a real capitalist country, but the closer you get from capitalism, the richer a country gets. So these small steps towards capitalism always bring prosperity and wealth, while these steps towards socialism, the closer you get to socialism, like Venezuela, which was a very, very rich country in the 50s,
Yes,
the
a
poorer you
lot of
get.
people don't know. In the 70s,
So okay, it's not true socialism, it's not true capitalism. Yes,
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 and
Venezuela was the
exactly.
richest country in South America in the 50s.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of people don't know. Even in the 70s, Venezuela was one of the, I think, 20 richest countries in the world, as rich as many European countries. And then they started with a lot of labor market regulations and these things, and situation became worse. But it started to become really worse then with Hugo Chavez in 1999. And you remember at this time, all intellectuals, left-wing intellectuals in the world, they were so fascinated by, oh, they called it the socialism of 21st century. And even in Germany, we have a leftist party, and the party
Yes,
leader told us, oh, Venezuela, this should be a real model for our economy as well. And the left-wing intellectuals in Harvard and United States universities, they praised Hugo Chavez, and everyone was fascinated. And then it failed, and now today no one speaks of oh no, this wasn't real socialism, sorry. And this happens again and again and again. And because we
yes,
spoke of China, I want to add
it's a nice chapter
something more.
in the book. Why intellectuals are socialist, and it's interesting, no? The one of the chapters of the book is
Yes,
about this argument why the intellectuals are leftists, and it's true. I remember I was in the university, and they were everyone was, oh my god, Venezuela will now become a very developed country because they now have this popular government with true democracy and true popular participation, and of course they're gonna get tremendously rich, and we are here with our capitalist government, which does nothing to the poor, to the people, and we are so. And 15, 20 years later, what we saw is a country with Haitian levels of poverty, with sub-Saharan levels of poverty, a country in which the last week I was reading the newspaper, and they told that the gasoline in Venezuela can be found nowhere. So the country with the greatest reserves of oil in the world, greater even than Saudi Arabia, has a shortage of gasoline. So it's like Milton
yes,
Friedman's phrase about the Sahara Desert and the sand. It's
yes.
becoming true.
Absolutely. Yes, it's crazy. And with this hunger, because you spoke about it, there are a lot of starvation or hunger in Venezuela, and this is typical for socialism. And if you want to know what is my most important argument uh, pro capitalism, this is poverty and hunger. And I will tell you a little bit about this because these are facts that uh, almost no one knows. Before capitalism, 200 years ago, 90% of the world population lived in extreme poverty. 90%. And today, the rate has fallen to less than 10%, from 90% to 10%. This is what capitalism did in the last 200 years. And now, one thing that is more important than this, half of this reduction was in the last 35 years. In the last 35 years. And these are exactly the years that are criticized by left-wing economists like Thomas Piketty, who tells us, oh, inequality is growing. This is his argument. To sum up, his argument is in the 20th century, uh, uh, inequality was reduced, but now it started since maybe the 80s or the 90s, and now the gap between the poor and the rich becomes bigger and bigger. And this is always the most important argument of socialists, inequality and this gap between the poor and the rich. But exactly these 35 years were the years when 1.2 billion people escaped extreme poverty. And you see, we speak about the same 35 years. I say this 35 years these years where 1.2 billion people escaped poverty. And um, Thomas Piketty says this 35 years, the rich between the gap between the rich and the poor became bigger. And I will come back to it because we spoke about China before. Look, China is a perfect example. I told you the number of people living in extreme poverty in 1981, it was 88%. So, and at this time, you had no billionaires in China, not a single billionaire. Today, you have so many billionaires in China as in no other country in the world except United States. You have some more. So at the same time, poverty was reduced and the number of billionaires increased. And this is a perfect argument against this, what I call the zero sum belief, because um, uh, the fundamental of all
Yes.
socialist thought is the zero. They think the rich are only rich because they took it away from the poor. This is totally wrong. You can see it in China. It's if the laws of mathematics or logic, it wouldn't be possible if at the same time poverty is reduced and there are so many more billionaires. And
Yes,
I think
they think wealth cannot be
I tell
created.
people,
It's amazing.
yes, I tell people I don't care about inequality. I care about poverty. If I would ask people in China, oh, maybe you would like to go 40 years back because then you were more equal, everyone, in Mao's time. Everyone would tell me I'm totally crazy. Yes, sure, people were more equal, but there was poverty. And so I think we should
It's like
speak
that
about
speech from Margaret
poverty in the
Thatcher,
world.
and she said, you socialists don't care if the poor people get richer, as long as the rich get poorer, you are fine if the poor get even poorer, because you don't care about the elimination of misery. You just want the richer getting poor because you are envious. That's the true nature of this socialist thought. So when we
Yes,
say,
and
we
there's
have eliminated 1.2 billion, and they say, what about those billionaires with the yachts? So they simply reason in this way. It's a pity.
this inequality is a very important topic for envious people because they look always whether there's someone who has more. Is there someone who has more than I have? But for me, poverty is a much more important topic, and uh, but uh, there's another point. You see, I have a worldwide view. I speak about what happens in Asia. I look what happens all over the world. But I remember when I was young, all the socialist people they spoke a lot what happens this time you called it the third world, so the developing countries, and about this today. If they speak about inequality, they speak always only about Europe or about United States. Yes, if I have a lot of
Yes.
discussion in the United States and they have a lot of socialists, but I think they don't care about what happens in the world. For example, they hate globalization because I agree. Maybe with globalization it can happen, that in United States maybe 100 people come from middle class down. The situation will get worse. I agree, but in the same time, maybe 1,000 people escape poverty in Asia. But I think this is a very uh, egocentric view, only from a developed country. If you only look what happens there in United States, sure, it's international competition, and I think we have no no right that we
It's a
say
very short-sighted view.
because Europe or because we live in United States, we have the right to have a better life than people in Asia and Africa. No, it's not. If they are better in a way, okay, then we have to look how we can improve maybe education, become more qualification, have a lot of reform. And I think there should be a lot of reforms in our countries. For example, here now in Italy as well and in France. Maybe we can speak about this for a moment. In Germany, we had as well today. We have a very good economic situation. Now we have this problem with Corona crisis, not so hard as in other countries, but sure, all countries in the world are affected. But all the last 10, 20 years, we had a good economic situation in Germany, much better as in most other European countries. But this was not through the politics of Angela Merkel. No, what a lot of people don't know, we had economic reforms in the beginning of this century. By the way, this was by social democrat chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who became a lot of problems in his own party because these were labor market reforms, more liberalization. He reduced taxes, and this was deregulation, a little bit like they did in Sweden or Maggie Thatcher. Not so, but it was a little bit the way. But it helped. It helped a lot. Then it started to go better and better and better with this labor market reform. I have doubts whether this development, positive development, will go on because in the last years we have a very negative policy in Germany with our Chancellor Angela Merkel that goes more in direction of a planned economy and a state, and uh, they they restructured the energy industry in the planned economy. Now they're going to do the same way with the automotive industry. So I'm skeptical for the future. But this was the reason what happened, and I think what Italy would need or France would need is a similar thing. Someone like Maggie Thatcher, maybe, or something like Gerhard Schröder did in Germany, with more capitalism. And so maybe I can ask you: are there some politicians in France? I think Macron tried to do something in this direction, but it's very hard because the French people are so extreme anti-capitalist as no other country in Europe, and they made it, I think, almost impossible for him to make this reform. You have always the unions on the street and a lot of resistance for every reform in the labor market. But maybe I can ask you something. What do you think? Are there people in Italy now who understand that the more capitalism would be the solution and not more state, more redistribution? Is there some hope now, or are you only a very rare exception? Tell me.
That is a very sad question, and I, I'm even sadder because I have to answer it. But I don't think that there is hope in the. It's very sad. No, we don't have politicians with a free market idea. I think, and unfortunately, the average Italian is very socialist, like the French and also the Spanish, I guess. And our work as a think tank and also other think tanks in Italy is to try to find a way to change this mentality to to make it that and see the benefits of capitalism, free market, of small tariffs and a small state in general. But I'm very skeptical. I think everyone in the institute is very skeptical, but we have hope, I guess, not for the next 10 years, not for the
Sure,
next
you have
12
to go
years,
on.
but in the
You know,
future, maybe.
it started always with books and with ideas. Look, why are leftist people are so strong today? Socialists everywhere. It was in the 60s in the university. What happened there? We had it as well in Germany with all this left wing and Marxist ideology. It started there. It was in the United States. It is here, and it starts always with books, with discussion at university, with think tanks, and it came not from one day or from 1 year to another that their ideology became so strong. And I tell people always, if you want to turn this back in the other direction, we have to learn from them. We have to do it the same way as they did it. It starts with discussion like we have now, maybe only a few people, maybe only sure only minority, but everyone who, for example, reads these books and spread this message can help and tell it to other people. And this is what I like to do as a person. Maybe I've been an entrepreneur. I became wealthy in the real estate business in Germany, but 4 years ago I sold my company and I said no. I made enough money now as an entrepreneur, but I can't make money with books. This is not something where you can earn money. But what I want to do now to help with my articles, so I'm very happy that I can write now regularly in Italy, Italian newspaper as well, like I do in France, like I do in the United States, and like I do in Switzerland and Germany. And I think this is what people need. They need ideas, they need knowledge, and I understand when you say you are skeptical, but on the other hand, what I learned, if you speak with young people especially, sure, there are a lot of leftist young people, but as well, um, if I have their lectures, yes, and I can convince a lot of young people because I'm not so defensive. Like some people said, yes, capitalism, sure, I know it has a lot of flaws and we have to improve it. And I know it's not so good, but yes, maybe it's not so bad. No, I come here with my lectures with this T-shirt. Even if there are 200 leftist people in the room or 500, yes, I say, here, I come with, I love capitalism. And I tell them, I love it because this is the best way you can do against poverty in the world. And I tell them the facts. And I think this is very important that we have to not always defensive. So to defend something, no, we have to, on the other hand, we have to attack and we say, your ideas proved wrong since 100 years and you brought so many problems to people. I can recommend you, in addition to my book, another book. It's a great book written by a friend of mine. His name is Christian Niemitz. The title is Socialism, the Failed Idea that Never Dies. It's a great book. You should translate it in Italian, definitely. Socialism, the great idea that never dies, because he shows that what happened all over the last 100 years, there were 3 steps in the beginning of every socialist experiment. Intellectuals were so fascinated, even by Joseph Stalin. There are so many quotes from intellectuals were so fascinated by Joseph Stalin, and they told us, no, this Gulag and concentration camp, this is it's all fake news. Don't believe it. Someone like Sartre, for example, Jean-Paul Sartre, taught this. And you have so many famous intellectuals. And then with Mao Zedong, it was the same. They were so fascinated. They were fascinated by China in the time
And these
when
people
people
read Gulag
when people
Archipelago
died.
and keep believing
And
and kept believing. And no, it's not true. It's not like that. The Gulags are not like that. But there's a book talking about the Gulags. There's actually an actual book, and they know, no, it's not true. They're doing it
yes,
for a
yes,
reason.
yes. But even if they agree, and in most cases they will tell you, don't tell me something about Soviet Union. Don't tell me something about China. Don't tell me something about Cuba. Don't tell me something about Venezuela. Don't tell me about East Germany. Don't tell me about Yugoslavia, because we don't want all this. We have another new idea. And I give you, I think it's very ridiculous. I have one example, and people are laughing always when I tell them that imagine a housewife who bakes a cake and she invites guests, and the guests they get sick, even they have to vomit after eating the cake. Yes, then the housewife says, okay, maybe the recipe was not so good. I have to change a little bit for next week. Next week she changes a little bit because they saw guests got sick and they had to vomit, and they change a little bit in the recipe. But what happens? Guests vomit again, so get sick. And then third week she says, okay, the first one it was not so good. I take the recipe. I think I have to change it a little bit. Make this cake with the same recipe, but with some new ingredients, with some changes. People vomit again, and then she does it 24 times again and again with the same recipe, and 24 times guests will vomit. You will tell me there's no housewife in the world who is as crazy as this. But this is exactly what socialists
Yes, you remind me of a Brazilian poet who said that this socialism is like a suit selling business. But when the suit does not fit the customer, it changes the customer, not the suit.
yes,
You were
exactly.
wrong. It's not the suit. You were wrong. And yeah, it's interesting. You remind me of the of one of the chapters of the book about why the intellectuals hate capitalism so much.
This is a complicated topic. First I say something about it, but the next thing is I recommend everyone to read, especially this chapter of the book. It was praised in a lot of reviews, and for me it was the most important chapter because it's strange that the facts are so clear, and there are people who call themselves intelligent, and they hate capitalism. And I think this has a lot of reasons, but I will speak about two reasons. First reason is intellectuals are used to think in theories, perfect theories to construct something. This is their job. I can understand it. And socialism is something like this. Lenin wrote in one of his books that intellectuals have a very important role because the worker movement this spontaneously workers movement don't will uh, bring socialism, but intellectuals have to bring it to the workers, and they have to construct this so-called scientific theory of scientific socialism. So this is socialists are intellectuals are needed for socialism, but capitalism is no kind of theory. Capitalism came in reality in the same way like maybe animals or plants came from a spontaneous development. It was not this way that Adam Smith wrote a book and then he gave the book to a politician and he told them now please make a
Yes,
capitalism
yes.
in our country. This was not the way. And so I think intellectuals, because this is their world with theories and writing books and so, and they for this capitalism they are not needed so much. This is one thing. But then there's another thing. Um, in psychology, we distinguish between two ways of learning. The one way you call implicit learning and the other explicit learning. I will tell you the difference and I will tell you why it's so important for our question. Explicit learning means um, academic learning, like book wisdom, what you learn at school, what you learn at university. And implicit learning is learning by doing. And and explicit learning, the result is then you get an academic degree. It's book wisdom. Implicit learning is the result is implicit knowledge, or you call it gut feeling, or you call it intuition. And for entrepreneur, this implicit learning is much more important than book wisdom. I wrote my second doctoral dissertation about super rich people, and I conducted interviews with 45 super rich people, most of them self-made, between 30 million and 1 billion euro. And I asked them, if they make decision, whether gut decision is more important for them, intuition or analysis. Sure, both of this is important, but most of them told me that gut decision and intuition is much more important than analysis. But now this is the point. The intellectuals, they learn at school and in university. The more books you read, the better you are. And they think in life this should be um, the order in the society should be according how many books you read. If someone read not so much books as they don't understand why this guy has at school, he was my neighbor, he was not so good at school as I was, he hadn't read his books, maybe he even was not in university, and now he has the better house, the better car, and what's the worst thing, the prettier wife that I have. And for him, world is he cannot understand it. He said the market has to be wrong because the result is wrong. The result is wrong because I read more books. I have my doctor degree, or like I have two of this. And why does this guy without any academic degree, without only one doctor degree, without having to read so many books as me, why does he has the bigger house, the better car, and what's the biggest problem? The prettier girl at his side. I don't understand it. I think capitalism is absolutely wrong, and you have to you have to change it because they don't understand, and this is the point. They don't understand that there are two ways of learning: this implicit learning, and explicit learning, and there are two categories of wisdom. And in another book from me, it's the Wealth Elite, I wrote a lot about this, about the theory from Hayek and from Polanyi about this implicit knowledge. And this is very important to understand. But most intellectuals, they don't understand it. They understand only their kind of knowledge and their kind of wisdom. And maybe the third answer is it's a competition between two elites in the society, the economic elite, and then the people who call themselves the intellectual elite. And it's like a competition between both of them. And you see, it's not too easy, I admit it, but I
Yeah,
don't want.
it's
I'm not.
interesting because yeah, I noticed the leftists in general and intellectuals mainly don't get the concept of merit, and that's why they hate meritocracy so much, because they think meritocracy is as you said, I've read so many books, so I have merit, and they don't get the actual concept of merit, which is in any way help someone to get something he wants. So a person in the street that doesn't care if you have read
Yes, and
I don't know, Nietzsche. They don't care. They want to have a product, and if you offer them this product, this commodity, they're happy. And this is merit, to be able to know these things. And the intellectuals don't get it, and they get envy, and then they get very very angry about it. And
envy is another good keyword because I did a lot of research and read a lot of about academic envy research. I didn't know before that something exists like this, but we have a lot of books and a lot of scientific essays in the United States, especially about envy. And with envy, the thing is, no one admits, or almost no one admits, that he's envious. Yes, always other people are envious, but no, I'm not, absolutely not. Sometimes if I have my lectures, I ask the audience, I give a range maybe from 1 to 10, and 1 means absolutely not envious, and 10 means extremely envious. And then I ask who's between 1 and 3, and who's between maybe 7 and 10. And most people raise their hands that they are between 1 and 3, what means no, or only very, very little bit envious. But this is not true. And the reason is we know it from this research, because envy is this emotion that is people don't admit being envious, because if you are envious, you admit the other guy has something that you want to have and that you have not. And then it comes to the question, why does he has it and I not? And this is sometimes not so comfortable for your self-conscious. A lot of people get inferior feelings
Yeah,
then.
it's an
Then they look
admission
for
of potential inferiority. Yes.
yes, they look then for explanation. Yes, he's rich, but he became it only with the exploitation of other people because he's immoral and he with maybe with dirty tricks, or maybe he had only luck. But this is only because this is easier than for a self-conscious if he finds this way of explanation. And envy is a very important thing in society. But sure, socialists they never admit being envious. But I had another study. I think you will publish it in Italy as well. It's published now in United States in the last
Hmm.
week, and it's the rich and public opinion. And we asked people, for example, questions like this: Do you think, or do you support the idea of taxing millionaires very extreme, take away from them, even if you have absolutely no personal advantage from this? Or another question was, would you support the idea of reducing CEO compensation, CEO salaries, drastically reduce them and distribute it more evenly among the employees, even if every employee has only $2 more every month? And this is always the same principle. You take something away from someone, but you have no advantage. And this is the problem with envious people. They don't want to improve their situation, that they think about themselves. How can I change my life? How can I improve my situation? For them, it's enough if they make life worse for the other guy who's richer than them. This is what they makes them feel good. And we had one other last example of the question in the study. We had one question, we called it the Schadenfreude question. I don't know the Italian word for this, but the question is, when I hear that a millionaire lost a lot of money due to a risky business, I think it serves him right. So he gets happy because someone else lost a lot of money. And these are these feelings of envy. And uh, this is very important for socialists because this is a very negative emotion, but a lot of people share this negative emotion. And so they can use this. I don't think that they make this emotion. This emotion of envy is there anyway, but they can exploit it for their own purpose.
Yes, it's true. It's a very common trace in the leftist psychology, if we may say. The another argument I'd like to talk about is the financial crisis. You say in our book, it's not a capitalism's fault, and well, it's a very, yes, it's a very, in the mainstream media, bold statement, but it's true. So would you like to talk about it?
Yes, you selected two very important chapters in the book, but the most complicated chapters where it's maybe not so
I'm
easy.
sorry.
Yes, no, you're right, but I have to apologize because it's not so easy to explain it. First of all, I read dozens of books and scientific journals about financial crisis, but sure, 99.9% of the people do not, and for them they have very easy explanation. They're looking for scapegoats. This was always all crises in history. In the Middle Age, when you had the plague or disease or any kind of crisis, they always they looked for minority as scapegoats. They killed like 60,000 to 80,000 witches, for example, in Europe, because they said the witches were responsible for the plague. Or then they blamed Jewish people that they poisoned the well. Or it was always minorities. And in the financial crisis, the minority was, they said, it's the greedy banker. And this seemed logical for people because they always look for scapegoats. Even now, Corona crisis, we have a lot of crazy conspiracy theory people here in Germany they say Bill Gates caused a coronavirus crisis. He made it to make a lot of more billions with the maximum. Very stupid stories, but this is the same principle. They always look for scapegoat. In reality, the explanation is much more complicated. What intellectuals will tell you, what mainstream media will tell you, and what politicians will tell you, that the financial crisis was a result of deregulation, of neoliberalism, and all this. But this is not true. I prove it in my book. It's exactly the other way around. First, it was the central banks who played a very huge role. When we had this dot-com bubble, the beginning of the 2000 that bursted, and then they reduced taxes, and so and this has nothing to do with capitalism. What they did, uh, but on the contrary, they caused the next bubble, the house price bubble, and then in addition to this, there were regulation by the government. They have it always with minority. They called it disadvantaged minorities, and they saw that minorities like black people, for example, or Latino people, that they don't get as many uh, uh, loans, mortgages like white people. And then they said, okay, we have to change it a little bit to do something again. This is what they called discrimination. And then they forced financial institutions to give mortgage to people who have bad credit history, only because of their ideology. And this was the origin of this, what you called later this subprime crisis, because these were the loans that had, in the end, brought all these problems. You have you could never, you can never give mortgages to people with such a bad credit history. But they did it, and sure, then there were people who saw it as opportunity to earn a lot of money. But the origin was not regulation. The origin uh, was the contrary. This was the idea from the politicians. And so you see that there were a lot of causes of the financial crisis, but it was not deregulation at this time. So um, as I mentioned, there are, I think, in the books, I don't know, I think 12 chapters. Two of them are a little bit more complicated. I admit this were the two chapters we spoke about,
Oh,
but
yes, yes. This moral
about
hazard problem was seen in the 1929 crisis, and they even today they say, it's a capitalism crisis. Instead, it was an interventionism crisis. Uh,
yes,
these bubbles created by the central banks were the actual guilty ones, as we may say.
and if you have the wrong diagnosis, then you have the wrong therapy, and you know what they did. It becomes worse and worse. If you compare the the uh, the debt, I think, in whether it's in Italy or whether it is in the United States, and that was a reason of the crisis. And now we have much more debt than we had 10 years ago, or 12 years ago, at the beginning of the outbreak. And so I think the financial crisis, and as well the euro crisis, it's not over. A lot of people speak of this, that something happened in the past, but I say no, it's not something. We are in the middle of this crisis, both financial and the euro crisis, because only as a thought experiment, if you would maybe stop this policy of European Central Bank with buying bonds with for billions and billions, or if they would have uh, higher interest rates, only a little bit higher, maybe 2%, it would be enough, especially here for Italy, for you. It would be
We have negative interest rates right now. It's
yes,
something unacceptable.
it's total disaster. And they tell you now, oh look, things are okay now, but I say, take away all this with this this EZB policy. And what would happen then at this moment? It's like if you have somebody maybe a drug addicted, yes, and he's shaking and
Yes.
shaking, and then you give him some like methadone or so, some substitute, false heroin, and then he stops shaking. Oh, looks healthy. This guy, he's healthy. No, he's not healthy. Take away the substitute, and then and look what happens. He will shake again and more as he did before. And so I think, and this is why I wrote this book. The big problem is we will have the next step of financial crisis, euro crisis, and so on. And then socialists will tell you, look, this is crisis of capitalism. And then uh, the socialists all over the world, they will think now is their big, opportunity. Was even now with the Corona crisis, I wrote a lot of articles by leftist people. They wanted to tell us that Corona crisis is a crisis of capitalism and all this. Very not logical. We had this kind of disease or pandemic even before capitalism came. It has nothing to do with capitalism, but it's always with every crisis they will have their interpretation and say this is a crisis of capitalism and we have to abolish now capitalism. And this is their and this is why I have this uh, the German title of the book is a little bit different as it is in Italy and in the United States. The German title is Capitalism is not the problem, but capitalism is the solution. And I think this is the message that we have to spread to the people, that it's not the problem, it's absolutely it's the solution. But and I think it's not only with left wing people. Look, for example, I don't know how it is in Italy. I don't know enough about it, but I know it in France, for example, that that's the extreme right that we have there, like Marie Le Pen and so. They have as well the socialist ideas. It's not only a problem with left-wing people. This right-wing people in France, they are also anti-capitalist. How is it in Italy? Maybe you can tell me. You have not only the left, you have as well this right-wing people. How's their attitude to capitalism, to free market, and so? Is it similar?
It's unfortunately very similar to France. Right-wing parties are socialist. The left-wing parties are socialist. The center-wing parties are socialist. We are choosing between different shades of red, if you may say. It's a pity because, as you say, with the coronavirus crisis, they're everywhere in every single country. They're using this opportunity to advance. I'm not listening to you. I can't listen to you. Let me see. Can you listen to me? Can you listen to me? Mi sente adesso? Mr. Reiner? Do you listen to me? Penso che sia con lui il problema. Sta ritornando.
Hello? Can you hear me now again?
No. Are you listening? Are you listening now to us?
I
Yes.
sometimes
Perfect.
sometimes
And
Yeah,
as I was saying, we have to choose
but
between different shades of red, unfortunately. So I don't think, yeah, if you're talking about politics and political parties and actual political action, Italy is very much like France in all bad ways. But we have better food, so it's nice. But politically speaking, it's more or less the same problem with France. We have this very hostile popular opinion, and the, I mean, even if politicians would like to advance liberalism and capitalism reforms, they would have to deal with a very hostile political, a very hostile popular opinion, and that's not something the politicians like to do. So yes, unfortunately, that's our reality now.
so
I
uh, but don't be depressed. I know there's a oh there's a like echo in my what I hear.
let me see this back.
Um, little bit technical problems. But can you hear me? Okay. Yes, but what
Yes.
I want to add, maybe in the a little bit in the end, don't be pessimistic and negative. Sure, there I know all the arguments. Today it seems so that all the socialists they have all the majority in media, intellectuals, politicians. This is true on the one hand, but on the other hand, I know it from my experience. Uh, if something is so um, extreme, overwhelming, on the other hand, there's always room for counter movement, room for new and other ideas, especially for young people. But I think we have to learn something from leftist people because they were very successful as they did it. We have to have more fantasy things we do, and we have to uh, like in traditional way, there was this defend of capitalism. This was like, in a blue sweet old guy with sweating there and big belly sitting there, having a lot of money and speaking about capitalism. Sure, this is not attractive for young people. So I think you have to do it in a different way. Like I hope I can come to Italy. I hope I can give some lectures and
It would be
my
very nice if you could
experience
come to our next
my
conference.
experience is if you believe in this and if you have the really facts and if you explain it easily. I know too many pro-capitalist people, they speak about complicated here quotes with Mises and Hayek and so on, this theory and that theory and complicated. Everything's okay, but you cannot convince people in this way. You have to make it you have to have the facts from history, like here's the fact about what 200 years ago and now, here's the fact what happens the last 35 years, here look what happened this country and this country, the way that I will do it. And if you do it this way, and if you don't do it defensive, but if you do it offensive, you have to attack. Yes, not defensive. Oh, maybe yes, maybe uh, this was usually
Yes.
how defend of capitalism did it. If they discussed with some left-wing people, they leaned over, oh, I have some similar idea to you, and you're not so wrong, and I have also some green ideas, maybe. No, I do it different. I attack, you were all wrong. All your ideas failed. 100 years, again and again. Last time, what did you say about Venezuela 20 years ago? All it was all wrong, totally wrong. And now you tell us the same bullshit story again and again. Yes, and I think this is the way. If you attack that young people, they don't want someone only to defend existing system order, and we don't have should be in the position to defend only what exists, because we know there are a lot of problems, but these problems are not because we have too much capitalism, but we have too less capitalism, and we have to
Yes.
change society. But the question is to change in what direction. For example, in Italy now, I say your slogan should be Italy needs Maggie Thatcher. and you should tell people something about Maggie Thatcher and UK, like it is in my book, because UK was in a very similar situation as Italy is today. Uh, we called this time UK the sick man in Europe, with so many strikes, strong trade unions, and a lot of people out of work and with no hope, and with a uh, lot of debt and so on. And then Maggie Thatcher came with their reforms, liberalization, reducing taxes, labor market reforms, and situation improved. Situation became better and better and better. But this is what young people don't know. And if they would know, you can have an example from history. Like, and if you don't want to have this extreme way as Maggie Thatcher did, maybe you can do it like Gerhard Schröder, who was, don't forget it, a social democrat. What he did in Germany, did the same: reduced taxes, labor market reform, liberalization. And when he started this, then we had uh, 4.5 million people out of work, and uh, this was reduced then to only 2 million people who were out of work, and the situation uh, the situation improved. And these are historic examples where you see what works and what not. And this was always the same in history, whether it was in China with the economic reforms, Deng Xiaoping, more market liberalization, uh, more private property, things become better. In Sweden, they did it the same way, things became better. In Germany, we did it, things became better. And it worked always. Why shouldn't it work in Italy? And this is what we should tell the people. Sure, we have to change things. You know, young people are not this kind of people who want that everything keeps the same as it is. Young people like I was are, they want to change something to better, and it's good. We are the people who want to change things, but we don't want to repeat this what always failed in history. We want to look what worked and what did not work, and not in theory, not with books, but in reality. And so I look forward to come to you to Italy. I hope with young people. And I love Italy. Exactly 1 year ago, I was there in Capri with my girlfriend. Yes, and it was so great. I love Italian music. Yes, I love to be there in Capri. And I was in Roma as well. And so, and uh, next time, I hope coronavirus it
Right.
will not be it will not be forever, and things become better. Is it allowed now today in Italy to have how many people can meet there today? Do you have any restriction, like not more than 50 people or not more than 100 people? How's it today now in Italy?
Oh, there are a series of rules, and they change between the provinces, so it depends on where you want to make a reunion. But each province, each region, have a different rule regarding it. But I have two more things to say. We are arriving at the end of the interview, so I'd like to ask you one more question. And the
Sure.
first thing I
Sorry.
would like
Yes.
to invite you to our next conference. We would be very pleased to have you here. We're still organizing it. We are waiting to see if the coronavirus situation passes by. So we are going to have this next national conference, and if you can come and participate, we'd be very pleased. And the question is, you were talking about it some minutes ago, but what are the suggestions you would do to us, to Italy and as a country, and to the Italian people, the Italian young people as a whole, about what to do to achieve a level of freedom of free market and capitalism and liberty, as I don't know, as South Korea and Chile and Australia, New Zealand, and these countries in the first 20 positions of the Heritage Foundation ranking.
Yes, you see, I think if I have it correct in mind in this heritage ranking from I think it's 180 nations, and I think Italy is number 74 or something like this, if I have it correct in mind. And I think it should be your main aim to be, even if you're only number 20 or maybe 30, it would be a big improvement. And the way is very, very easy. First, labor market reforms. Yes, they say it's to protect workers, but the effect is the contrary. It's something that that it's very often so that they do things what sounds good. We protect workers that you can't fire someone so easily, but the effect is the contrary, that they don't hire more people. Exactly the contrary. So labor market reforms would be very important. Then reducing taxes would be very, very important. I think in a lot of cases, liberalization things as as always worked, and the problem is um, sometimes if things became very bad, like it was in UK, I have this example, then people understand, okay, we have to do something. If things become very, very bad, they understand it then. But it's no guarantee that this will happen. The It can be the contrary, like we had it
Yes.
in uh, Germany and in Italy in the 20s, yes, when fascism came and National Socialism came. There's no guarantee that you can say things become worse and then people will understand it and then it will become better. It can come really, really worse than that. People have um, the wrong analysis. They don't understand what happens, and they go the wrong way. And then they tell you, okay, we have to go faster and faster the same way. And this was, how National Socialism came in Germany when this time 6 million people were out of work, and Hitler promised us things, or in Italy with Mussolini some years before. So there's no guarantee, and so uh, I don't hope, to be honest, that things will become very quick better, because I don't see there the politicians, and this is what you uh, told me as well. But I think people like you and these think tanks are so very, very important, not for changes from 1 month or from 1 year to another, but in the long run. If you see how the Reagan Revolution in the United States uh, or the Thatcher Revolution in UK, how this could be happened, because there were a lot of think tanks. Yes, there were a lot of think tanks, and the problem is in Germany we have not this kind of think tanks. We have only one think tanks with very few, 3 or 4 people maybe. And I was in South Korea; they have also very small think tanks. So people are better in UK, and you see that it works in UK. You have more in the newspapers, and so with intellectuals you have more pro free market people who understand these ideas. But this is only because of this work of think tanks from year and year. And so I think we have to work together all here in Europe with think tanks, people in UK, and I'm here, and you, and sometimes like a positive movement, like here, I love capitalism movement. It will not bring something in in the short run, but you have to learn from the leftist people. They had a lot of patience. It didn't work for them either from 1 year to another, and we have to. They were successful, and I think always we should learn and copy things from successful people. And if left-wing people were successful, look how they did it, and do the same way.
Oh, yes, and they were successful with wrong ideas. So they have the right ideas, it will be easier, I guess. And well, it was a very insightful talk. I'm very happy. I think I can say in the name of the entire institute, we are very pleased and very thankful for this talk. I hope we can talk another day, maybe some days first.
Sure, absolutely. And sorry, I forgot something. In Germany, I started last year with social media, different social media like Facebook, Twitter. I've now here, it's good, more than 50,000 followers. But the problem is, what I write is almost in German. And so 1 week ago, I started one Twitter account only in English. So you see, I have two Twitter accounts now. One is in German and the one is in English. And in the English one, I will post as well all these articles that are published in Italian language, and I publish the articles in English language. And I think I have now only, I think, 35 followers or something like this, not as this more than, I think, 55,000 that
and
I
what's
have different social media. But if
what's
you
the
can,
account?
if you can join it, this Twitter, I post almost every day
And what's
a little bit in English, and if
the name of
something
the
is
Twitter account?
published in it, yes, it's with my name. You can see it, but distinct with there are two Twitter accounts. One is most on the one I have, I think, 4,500 followers. This is the wrong one with German. And there's another Twitter account with EN. This is English with only 35 followers. And this is the one you should follow, because on the other one it's confusing. It's most of it is in German, and no one likes to read or can read this German. But the other is only English, and sometimes if I publish things in Italy, hopefully more and more. And I want to thank you for this great cooperation. This is great for me, for me as well, and I can compare it with other countries, and it's so
So
important
it's
for
this
me.
one.
I have to take my classes. Yes, exactly. It's this one with
So it's 38 followers, and we have a very
38.
nice.
Okay, three more. Yes,
We are
great.
growing. We are growing
Three.
very, very fast.
So, okay. So I thank you. Sure, we can have next conversation. I'm happy about it, and but more important, if situation becomes better, that I will meet you in person and come to you and have some lectures and have some interviews and question and answers. I appreciate very, very much, and thank you for this opportunity
Oh,
for this
thank
evening.
you. It's very nice. Have a nice day, Mr. Zitelmann.
Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, yes, if you have